Hello, welcome to the Minnesota Black and African Author Festival by herARTS in Action. My name is Dara Johnson.
And my name is Kalia. The inspiration of the festival was to help students of Black and African heritage increase reading skills and comprehension through books with diverse representation.
But this is for everyone because we all benefit by learning more.
Today our author is Dara Beevas, and they will be reading their book Amina of Zaria, The Warrior Queen. Enjoy, and please stick around for an activity and author question and answer session.
This is the story of Amina of Zaria, the warrior queen. My dear little queen, when I was a little girl, I was often overlooked, yet I dreamed of becoming a fierce warrior. Today, I am Queen Amina of Zaria, a beautiful city in Africa. Zaria is part of Hausa, with the Niger River on one side and Lake Chad on the other. But I wasn't always a queen. Once I was small like you. When I was young, my country was always in terrible danger. Invaders from other countries attacked us, they stole from us, and took our land. While others were afraid, I longed to defend my people. I secretly practiced with spears and daggers when no one was watching. You see, princesses were expected to remain at the palace, away from danger. I had other ideas. One day, Marka, my grandmother, found me playing with a dagger. Amina, she cried, you hold that dagger with too much comfort, my child. Please don't be angry, I whispered. Amina, from the moment you were born, I felt in my bones that you would be a mighty queen. But Kaka, I am a fighter. You will see. Allah has plans for you, she said stubbornly. You are a warrior, and you are the future queen of Zaria. You are brave enough to be both. Grandma smiled and let me be. Kings and queens had ruled Zaria, yes. But warriors? I kept my mouth shut, even though I thought grandmother was very wrong. Soon I was the best horseback rider east of the Niger River. I could shoot a bow better than any archer in our army. Some said my arrows traveled hundreds of miles into the bush. By the time my brother Karama became king, I was already a legend. Even though I was older, as the first son, the throne passed to him. Good for Karama, I thought. I have battles to fight. I went off with the cavalry and trained with our military. I became a soldier. The generals were in awe of me, and it wasn't long before I earned their respect. But every now and then, I'd hear Marca's voice whisper, you will be a mighty queen someday, Amina. How can that be, Kaka? I'd ask, looking up at the stars. It wasn't long before I became the leader of Karama's armies. I mastered every weapon in Zaria's greatest warriors. Finally, I was the fearless fighter I'd always dreamed of becoming. Even my horse was fearless. I named her Demon, knowing that our enemies didn't stand a chance against us. Then Karama became very sick and died. That meant I would become queen. My dear little queen, between you and me, I was worried. I'm a warrior, I thought, and I'm the best. Will Hausa accept a queen who rides horses and fights battles? I'm nothing like Karama or any other king or queen. Warriors belong on the battlefield, not sitting at the palace. But again, I heard Marcus say, you are brave enough to be both. I took my brother's place. As I rode with our armies out to battle, my people cheered, Amina, Amina, our mighty warrior queen. Marca would have been proud. Mamas held up their daughters to greet me. Papas showed their sons how to hold their spears like Queen Amina. As our armies became the strongest in the land, I learned that queens come in all shapes and sizes. Brick by brick, my queendom built tall walls to show people from all over the world how magnificent Zaria is. My people call them Guanawar Amina, or Amina's walls. Because my cities are safe, people come from all around the Sahara to buy and sell salt, gold, cloth, and metals. Zaria is one of the wealthiest cities in the land now. Once I was even given 10,000 kola nuts, a sacred food. Never before had any ruler received such a gift. Through the years, many doubted me. Sometimes I even doubted myself. Neighboring cities did not expect me to become so powerful. But my grandmother was right. Queens like you and me are born to do incredible things. Fighting for what I believed in wasn't always easy, little queen. But like my mother and other queens before me, I must protect my people. I rule one of the largest empires in northern Africa. We have the fastest horses. Our armor is strong. My people were among the first in the world to bend metal into helmets. And you know what? At times, I lead more than 20,000 warriors at once. My dear little queen, I will tell you something my grandmother told me. In our language Hausa, she said, Dole ne kurayu sikin gasikyarku. That means you must live within your sacred truth. Marka would be proud that I am living mine. I'm a great warrior who is a mighty queen, and I'm a mighty queen who is a great warrior. I am both. People say that I am the pink heeled girl who defends the house of people. They say I will be remembered as Amina, daughter of Nikitao, a woman as capable as a man. My dear little queen, if you love something, be brave and fight for it. The end.
Even though you're at home, give a clap to Dara and Beevas for the work they put into Amina of Zaria, the warrior queen.
Now we will do an activity inspired by the book. Art and writing projects are a great follow-up to reading to help increase comprehension and retention.
Kids, make sure you have your parent, guardian, teacher, or nearest adult for permission to use supplies and workspace.
What inspired you when you heard the story Amina of Zaria, the warrior queen? The student in today's video thought about what her armor is, and that's her hair. She uses soft pastels to create her artwork. If you have pastels, please use them or use the art material of your choice to create a drawing inspired from the story with a guide towards what is your armor? What do you wear as you are out in the world making a difference?
if you want to turn it this way.
Show us what you made.
Picture a video of your work and tag us across all social media platforms at herARTS in Action.
After reading the book, I bet you have some questions. Let's see what our author, Dara Beevas, has to say when they chat with herARTS in Action founder Sarah Drake.
You can also post questions for the author.
Thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you especially Dara for being here today as we talk about your authorship and work that you've done. But before we get into your book, first tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where did you grow up, hobbies, your career, like who are you?
Thank you for having me. First of all, Sarah, I'm excited to be here and to talk about the book and talk about writing. I am from the DC area, and the long and short of my story is that I was a very early reader. I always loved books from the time I can remember. I had a book in my hand, and just really was one of those geeky kids with big glasses who preferred being in a corner with a book. And how that progressed through life is that I became an English major. I lived on a very small campus, an all women's college of, I don't know, 800 young women, and had this idea to start a magazine for Black voices on campus. And from that little glitch in life, fell in love with publishing. Before that, I was going to be a teacher. And I love the idea of helping other Daras who love books find books. And I thought I'd be an English teacher. And then again, just decided, what if I had, all of the 15 of us on campus at that time who were Black and Latina. What if we'd started just kind of pulling together our stories and our poems and our essays into a magazine? And I never looked back. So I love writing, but I really love helping other people bring their voices out. And so when I moved to Minnesota, I worked for a small publisher, and when that owner of that publishing company passed away, I started Wise Inc., which is my first baby. I now have two babies, real babies, but Wise Inc. was my first baby. And I've just always enjoyed coaching authors, working on the ground with authors who are writing, who are dreaming, who are ideating, who are solving problems. And Wise Inc. Opened in 2013, and we're still going strong. And fast forward to 5 years ago, it would have been, 2016. And I gave birth to my daughter, and really was looking for books about fierce Black women that I wanted to read to her. And there were lots of books on the market that I loved and I appreciated, but I remembered this book that I read as a freshman in college about African queens. And I still have that book. It's huge. It's like 9 by 12 and 300 pages. And it's like an encyclopedia of Black queens through history. And I was like, gosh, I wish there was something I could read to her as a little girl about these women. And then that was another glitch, like ding. So I started writing picture book versions of those stories in that big encyclopedia. And it kind of aligns with my ideas around why Wise Inc. matters to me so much. I believe that people hold within them keys to unlock what we need this universe to know and to feel and to I believe that books really are a bridge to all the good that we can have come out of our journey on this planet. So yeah, so I could go on about that, but I wrote these stories. The first was about Queen Amina, and here it is 5 years later. The book just came out, and my hope is to continue the series and have Wise Inc. be a big help for those books and for these books to be a big help for Wise Inc. And I just feel like the universe is blessing me with being in alignment with my purpose around telling stories and having good come out of the stories that we haven't heard yet that need to come out.
So, the book about Queen Amina, is this your first published book or do you have others? And if so, what are they about?
Yeah, so it's not my first book. It's my first, I would say, non-publishing related book. So my other books that I have are about publishing, book marketing, books like that. So my first book is called The Indie Author Revolution. That came out in 2012. And then I have a book for authors about social media. And then I have a book about book marketing that came out a few years ago. So, publishing has been my life.
Mm-hmm.
And my books have been all about and for that space. So I was excited about this book because this series of books is like the first series that I really got to write from a space of it not really being centered around the work that I do, but still complementing it for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so tell us about the book for Queen Amina. What are the kids in for?
I'm so excited. So here I have it. So this is Queen Amina on the front. And as you'll see, she's the warrior queen. And what I want people to know about the series is that, so many, I don't want to stereotype our girls because not every little girl loves princesses. My little girl does. And she's all about the Disney princesses. And I think that as little girls, we're sort of fed this narrative around the Cinderella story or the Snow White Sleeping Beauty story. And I'm not knocking that. I really got a lot of joy from those stories, and the idea of being transformed into a beautiful princess for an evening to have this amazing dance with the Prince Charming is great. However, what we miss with those stories are that most often those princesses are white. Most often those princesses have some sort of centeredness around a man in romance.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes those princesses are sort of ornaments, right? Like they are pretty and they look beautiful and they have a pretty gown and they live happily ever after. And what I wanted our young girls of all ethnicities and racial backgrounds to know is that this idea of queens and princesses is actually really real, that there are many real queens through history, many, and they're from all over the world. There are many fierce, amazing European princesses, Asian princesses, Latina princesses, indigenous ones, African ones, and their stories are so much richer than they met a man, fell in love, lived happily ever
Mm-hmm.
after. Women
Yep.
literally shaped civilization. And that's what's so cool about Amina is that she actually expanded her queendom to the largest of her whole era. No other queen or king had expanded their empire to reach as far, and she was crucial to the trading that happened in northern Western Africa. She was a fighter. She fought battles. She won battles. She was feared. She was adored. And she really, to this day, you can feel her presence and her impact in Nigeria. So that's what I wanted our little girls to know is that the fantasy of princesses is really fun, but the actual real stories of actual queens um, is also cool. And I've been obsessed with queens and monarchs of all backgrounds for decades. I mean, I love Queen Elizabeth I, and Queen Catherine, and yeah, there are just so many wonderful women in history who we just don't get to know as much about, especially when they're queens of color.
Right. And I found it interesting when we talked early on, you mentioned that there was a TV series that was based on this queen, and
Yeah.
the TV series, she's white. And I had no idea it was based on this African queen.
Totally. And I love the show. I watched it. I was a teenager in the 90s, so I watched Princess Xena, Warrior Princess. Lucy Lawless did a great job, and I was also shocked when I read that fact that Amina inspired her, but it made sense because Amina was known for being a queen who rode horseback, fought every battle, she mastered every weapon in the artillery, and she was known as this fierce warrior. I mean, she was known for it. So it didn't surprise me to that degree. Like, oh, of course they based her on a real woman, and of all the queens, Amina was known for being the fiercest. Um, which I think that's what my shirt says, right? Fierce, fierce like Amina. Um, so so yeah, she was super fierce, and what would it have been like to have had that character be played by
Hmm.
an amazing Black actress? I mean,
They're all about remakes right now.
yeah, in my mind, I see like Lupita playing her,
Hmm.
um, or Denai, the actress who plays Michelle Dead, would be great as Amina. So yeah, there are just so many amazing African actors who have risen to the mainstream and have become household names who would be great. So yeah, we need to see Amina on the screen, and we need to see in general just more fierce portrayals of actual women in history who have shaped civilization. We see way too many men and a lot of the same stories over and over, just shuffling out different actors. There are fresh and new stories we haven't seen yet and haven't heard enough about.
And with this story being historic, um, was your writing all truly historic based? You had to credit this big old book, or did you have some creative liberties, or was it some of both?
Totally took creative liberties. In researching all these queens, I mean, the book that I have is really the only book I could find that referenced some of these queens at all. There isn't another text that I've found that references some of them that are in the book. Amina is, a well-known queen, and she does have some documented history, but she is from the 16th century, so there is some stuff we just don't know. We don't know, for example, how did her brother die? We don't know a lot about her parents, and we don't know really a whole lot about how she died and what happened after her reign. So yeah, I do feel like when you are writing about historical figures, especially for children, you really do need it to have a beginning, middle, and end. And because Amina's story is just kind of fact based, this is the year, these are the years that she lived. She did have a real horse named Demon. Um, there are, there are, it's filled with facts about her life, but to shape a story around her, I
Mhm.
definitely took some creative liberties. So I read a little bit somewhere online about her grandmother and how she was close to her grandmother. So I basically weaved in a narrative around her grandmother being the voice that encouraged her, to know that she could be both a queen and a warrior. And this idea that like I need to choose, I can't be both. That that was my own creative liberty that I took there. Amina very well could have known that one day she would be queen and that she wasn't about to change her love of protecting her nation. She was going to do both, but I kind of made it a little bit of tension where she questioned her ability, and her grandmother kind of reinforced that she had that ability.
So, writing fiction, having to come up, or nonfiction, and having to come up with some creativeness to make it interesting. Was there something that, um, really kind of helped or propelled the project along? And was there something that also hindered it or was kind of like a stumbling block?
What helped was just that feeling that there isn't enough out there telling. There's just not there are not enough books telling these stories. That was really what really pushed me. Like, you can't not put this out here. It's really easy for you compared to a lot of people to have a book produced. This is your work. This is what you do. So you don't really have an excuse. And the story hasn't been told enough, and you really, um, you really owe it to your daughter. So my daughter really was the positive presence that kept me going, because it was lots of drafts. It was lots of writing and rewriting and letting people see it and getting creative feedback. And I mean, it was years of working on this. Barriers, I mean, I run a company, I have a family. Um, there are lots of things that have come up in the last few years, especially being a woman of color living in the Twin Cities, having a baby, having a second baby. So the barriers have been life. And I think that rings true for every author. Life gets in the way. And that's where I love hearing stories about the author who gets up at 4 a.m, or who puts all the kids to bed and they're up till 4 a.m. I did neither, and that's why it took me 5 years. I kind of, picked it up when I could and put it down when I had to be somewhere and do other stuff, and I gave myself a ton of grace. But those were the barriers, just lots of things coming at me personally and coming at me um, emotionally, and it's just been a ride getting it done. But for writers who are out there who maybe are wondering, like, do I have the time or the space or the mental capacity? It may take you 5 years. It didn't feel like 5 years. It feels like it was yesterday that I wrote it, and here it is 5 years later. I'm happy that even 5 years later I got it done.
So, as you know, the focus for this series is to inspire our Black and African students to increase interest in reading, and through representation and comprehension, increase their reading scores. And so, I want you to think about when you were younger and some advice you would have given yourself at that age, or things you learned at that age. So when you think about being, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school, is there a piece of advice that your younger self would give to a new reader or someone that doesn't like to read, especially since you were such an avid reader yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that there is a book out there that you will love. Um, I think what I would tell my younger self is to trust what I like to read and not get hung up on what other people say I should read. I think, especially as a child of color, um, the world of literature is so white, and there's a lot of supremacy weaved into how we teach writing and how we recommend books, and what books are considered high art and what books are considered pop.
Mhm.
And Sarah, you may relate to this. I grew up in the era where Terry McMillan and Her Waiting to Exhale was a big book. um,
Mhm.
there were just lots of Black artists who came on the scene in the 90s and early 2000s, and their books were not considered literature. um, and yet I decided very early on to read what I liked, and most often those books represented Black characters, Black women. um, Even if it wasn't a Black author with Black characters, there were characters who I could relate to, characters who maybe felt out of place or they didn't feel like they belonged, and I could relate to that, so I liked it. So my advice is to find books that really connect with your interests and who you are and what you like. If you don't like a book about flowers, then don't read the book about flowers. um, and don't be afraid to recommend to your teachers and to your librarian the books that you are reading or that you're drawn to and that you feel like they should have or should recommend, because oftentimes teachers and librarians, they just don't know. I think that a
Yeah.
lot of teachers do their due diligence to find like what's out there, what's trending, what are the fun new books, what are the what are the kids reading, and they try to bring those in. But sometimes people just go with what's always been done. And
Mhm.
I love Catcher in the Rye. That was a book I read and fell in love with as a, I want to say, eighth or ninth grader. Um, but when my daughter's in eighth or ninth grade, I'm sure that won't be the book that she connects with.
Right. Yeah, I think you mentioned something important, that it's good for some kids don't like to maybe ask for help, or you know maybe there's only a couple of adults that they feel they can really go to, and they're busy, so they don't want to inconvenience them. But like it is important, and it is okay to say to those adults like, hey, this is what I want, can you help me get access to it?
Yeah.
And they'll be happy to do it. And I didn't realize that, if libraries don't have something, they'll often get it
Well,
if you're asking for it. And if they don't, get your friend to ask for it too, because
mhm,
the more who ask for it, then they'll do it.
absolutely.
Was there an early experience you had where you learned that language or words had power?
Mm. Ooh, that's a beautiful question. Oof. Um, yes, yes. I'm thinking of a story in my teenage years, though I'm sure that this happened. I'm sure I have a story earlier in my life, right? But the story that really resonates in this moment is I was always kind of writing little poems and starting a story and stopping a story. Actually, I take that back. I have a story about that about I have an answer for when I was younger, because I was always writing. And one particular summer, I was visiting with my dad because my parents were divorced, and I'd spend summers with him and his wife and my step siblings, and we were all around the same age. And I was a dorky kid, and I said to my siblings, I said, like, what if we? This was before social media. We weren't on computers. What if we did a play um, for my dad and your mom? And they were like, okay. And I was like, no, no, I'll write the play, and you guys be my actors. And my sister and my brother said, okay, fine, fine, fine. Liz, what else are we gonna do? There's nothing on TV.
Right.
So I wrote this play. I don't even, Sarah can't even tell you what the play was about, but I remember just enjoying stretching my imagination and writing this play. And I had to be about 11 or 12, which meant my stepsister was 10 and my stepbrother was 8 or 9. So I wrote this play, and then we made our parents come upstairs in the living room. And it was a very dramatic play. I remember that. And my stepsister was such a good actress. Like she really put her whole self into it, y'all. And my brother also was just very animated and everything. And they acted out the play. And of course, they had parts, and we had our paper, and they knew what to say, and we just got into it. But it was all my words, right? And I had set the scene, and there was a plot, and there was an ending, and it was just really this powerful experience for me to have something created that other people were participating in. And my dad really wasn't up for it, right? Like we went downstairs, like, can you come upstairs? Can you come upstairs?
Mhm.
Oh, oh, because he had this job. He worked for the post office. He still does, and he had to wake up at like 4 a.m. Oh, I'm tired, y'all. I'm tired. He didn't really feel like it. But we dragged him upstairs, and in the first 10 minutes of the play, he says, all right, y'all, stop. Stop. I'll be right back. He goes downstairs. He brings up my stepmother, and he says, Terry, you have to watch this. This is amazing. They are like, he was so in awe of what we had done. And he was like, okay, from the top, do it from the top. And I remember that moment of feeling like I actually wrote something that good.
Mhm.
That my dad, who did not feel like he wanted to see it, he was not into it, forced him to sit down to watch this silly little play we had put on. He actually not only loved it, but stopped us so that he could bring his wife up to see it. And that's when I knew that I was meant to be a creative person. And as a teenager, several years later, my dad's mother, she was very, very much a stoic woman, very emotionless. Like I started telling her I loved her as like a 17-year-old to like make her say it back.
Mm,
She was a very, guarded spirit. And I remember being at her house and writing a story and saying, "Grandma, do you want to read this?" And she was like, "Sure." Very emotionless, read it. And then she looked at me and she said, "Did you write this, baby? You wrote this?" I'm going to cry because, of course, she's gone now. I said, "Yeah, Grandma, I wrote this." She said, "This is good." And so I
I
think
was
writing.
teary just you talking about your dad, that idea of like, the man, we get these images of what,
Yeah.
tired dads can be, and him going down. Like I kind of got a little teary just for you that, the, how important it is for, the adults listening that, like listen to the kids that, want to share. And if they're not sharing, show an interest so that then they'll want to share. And being able to have that moment with your grandma too is very touching, and to have people in our lives that we can share that with is really important. Your shirt and behind you there, we've got a lot of queens. Do you want to tell folks about this shirt and what you have coming? Like you wrote about Queen Amina, like what's next?
Yeah, I'll hold it up so you can see. All right, so we got Fierce Like Amina, so she's first. Smart Like Nzinga, Queen Nzinga of Angola, 18th century queen. Magical Like Nanny, she is a Jamaican queen. Curious Like Makita, an Ethiopian queen. So these are the books that are all written. We're actually going to jump from Amina to Nanny. Nanny is next. And actually, my illustrator just sent me the rough illustrations, and they are amazing. And Queen Nanny is this amazing woman. She's a Jamaican national hero. She escaped slaves on British plantations into the mountains where the Maroons were. Maroons were communities of escaped slaves who decided that they were not going to be they were not going to be forced to do labor for the British. They emancipated themselves, and Nanny would go down into these plantations and get people up there with her. So it was just really powerful to read her story. My husband is from Jamaica, so my daughter's half Jamaican, and her story has magic in it, so that's why she's magical. Yeah, and Queen Nzinga's story is also very similar. She kept her people from becoming enslaved. The Portuguese were colonizing Angola during her reign, and Angolan slaves were typically sent to Brazil. And she while she reigned, she was able to stop a lot of that from happening while she was alive. And then Makita, she's the oldest queen that I've had to write about. There's not much about her. She's what we know of as Queen of Sheba.
Okay.
And what we know about her is that she traveled to Israel, and she and Solomon had a baby. And there is a lot of centeredness around him in her story, so I struggle with that. So we'll see about how that story ends up manifesting. But she was known to be a very wise woman, and she went to Israel because she was curious about this man named Solomon being the wisest person. Is he really? Because I'm smart, I'm curious too.
Right. Hearing you talk about this, and talking about what has been written, there's a lot of oral histories out there. Have you had the opportunity to consult with people that are kind of the carriers of the oral stories at all?
I wish that I could say I've done a lot more of that than I have. I have a dream that I could, can at some point get to Nigeria to talk among the Hausa and hear in their own words about their um, Amina experiences, what they've been told through time. What we know is that because of colonization in Africa, so much has been lost,
Mhm.
and all of Nigeria, like Nigeria exists because of colonization, where we pulled all these people together and said you're a country, and Nigeria is made up of many different um, tribes who speak many different dialects. So there's that to reckon with. Nanny is a little bit different because Jamaica is a much smaller country than Nigeria.
Right.
But the Maroons are historically very closed off to people who are from the outside, which
Mm.
I find fascinating. They have their own dialect as well, and it makes sense that the Maroons are very protective of their history because, again, when we're talking about places that have been colonized, we get a little bit more guarded about letting our stories be told by the wrong people, and used for purposes where the proceeds and the money doesn't go back to the places where those stories originated.
Mhm.
So that's another responsibility that I feel that I have as an author, is to not just tell the story, but to make sure that these books in some way give back to the places where I'm talking about and to the people who actually are descended from Amina and from Nanny and from Nzinga, and from Makita.
That's awesome that you do that. So that's what, one, two, three, four or five.
It's four.
So
Mhm.
then what? Any other plans, or that's going to take a few years and we don't know what's coming after that?
It's gonna take me a while, but I do want to have a little Kings series because
Okay.
um, I think it's as important for Black boys to know about Black kings as it is for Black girls to know about Black queens. And again, there are just so many stories through time about, um, this is what I think about in the wee hours of the morning, especially now with a newborn, is what don't we know and why don't we know it? And what we've been told about our history as Black Americans is that, we were brought here from West African countries against our will, but we haven't been told enough about the kingdoms and queendoms who fought those powers that wanted us enslaved to begin with. Not to say that there wasn't some complicity around African countries selling us into slavery, but there is a process to how Africa became what it is today through colonization, and a lot of that story has to do with monarchs and people in power who were defeated by the colonizers, and I just would like to know more about that. And a lot of that story has to do with Black kings who were killed, who um, were enslaved themselves. So the thing is we just don't know enough about who we were before we came to America. And a little bit of this is kind of my quest to understand that more and to gift myself with knowledge that hasn't been taught to me, and probably on purpose, that I would like to have taught to my kids.
It's good motivator there. You will be busy for quite some time. And thank you for this work that you're doing, because it is very important, um, you know, especially for the diaspora, for us white people, for everybody. It has a different meaning and need behind it. Um, and so just wanting to know, any final thoughts you want to leave with the students that are listening before we're done today?
Yes, and that's just that, you know, I don't want you to think that Queen Amina and any of these other queens I've talked about today are, up here because they were queens, and you could never be as brave or as tough. The cool thing about Queen Amina is that she fought battles not just because she wanted to fight battles. She fought battles because her little area where she lived was under threat. And she really believed that she had the ability and the power to fight back. And not only did she fight back, but she then brought all of the neighboring villages and towns around her together through expanding trade. And what I find just beautiful about that is that we can be brave in our own small ways where we live. And I just want you to know that you don't have to be a person in power to do brave things and to fight for what you believe in. There are little opportunities every day to stand up for the person that is your friend, or your sister, your brother, people in your neighborhood who need your help. There are opportunities every day to say, teacher, why are we reading this book? Can we read this other book? Even that's fighting for what you believe in. You decide what you believe in and you fight for it. There's never, in my opinion, it's never too early to fight for what you believe in. And I know that a lot of adults think they know everything. I told my daughter yesterday, who's 4, mommy and daddy see everything and we know everything. And I was kidding with her, and she said, Mommy, you and daddy don't know everything. And she's right. I don't know. And the adults around you, they will learn as much from you as you learn from them. So you stand up for yourself, you fight for what you believe in, and it's never too early to be brave.
Well, thank you so much, Dara, for those wise words, and again for all the work that you're putting into these important books to share with our children. Thank you for being here, and thank you for everything.
Thank you. This was so fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Thank you to author Dara Beevas for answering our questions about their writing and book, Amina of Zaria, the Warrior Queen.
We hope you are as inspired as we are. This is an activity made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Central Minnesota Arts Board. Thanks to the legislative appropriation from the Arts and Culture Heritage Fund. Thank you.
The Minnesota Black and African Author Festival is also possible because of herARTS in Action and the generous sponsors. Thank you to the African American Employees Research Group at Central Care, Higher Works Collaborative with the Bush Foundation, Apiary Co-working, Voices Black Business Resource Group at Capital One, and Branding Up International. Help the authors make sure their books are in as many libraries as possible. If you don't see their books in your local library, please request it.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember to keep reading.